Hello and welcome to the Digital Digest, your weekly breakfast of insights, tips and tricks and general information that will help anyone trying to move things forward in this digital world of accounting. This show is sponsored by iPlicit, the mid-tier multi-entity finance solution for those businesses that have outgrown their entry-level systems. It's also brought to you both by Digital Disruptors and Beaver and Struthers, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by John Toon as we dive into the world of e-commerce apps. So, e-commerce, like this has been a huge area of growth, understandably, since COVID hit, and lots of businesses diversifying where they didn't do anything online and now they're starting to do it. So we're getting this kind of weird blend of traditional businesses with a little digital arm, and so they're going, how do I, make this more efficient and effective? Like from my digital team, this has been a big area. Are you experiencing the same in your digital team, John?
Yeah, it's definitely been an area of opportunity for us, and I think, like you say, come from sort of two main sources, but pretty much seems to have been triggered by COVID in the main. And I think the more challenging area typically is where it's a more traditional business that's been working from had a shop on a street somewhere and then decided to sell online, or has suddenly realised that they've been able to sell a product to through Amazon, for example, and then struggled to deal with the management of that in terms of, it's a slightly different way of working. The data and information that you need for accounting purposes can be a bit more challenging. And there's quite a lot of admin involved, particularly now trying to keep these sites up to date if you don't have the right systems in place. And I think the other area of growth that you found is like just people who are, targeted becoming an e-commerce business. Maybe they might have been, just selling, spare clothes that they've had, and then suddenly become a proper business rather than just sort of, just something to do on the side. And I think for me, typically they're much more familiar with the platform, so their knowledge of what they're kind of doing with the platform tends to be better. But if they've grown from a small base, they might be using, say like an Excel spreadsheet just to manage things, and then suddenly then trying to look to move into a set of an accounting system with various connections. They, as I said, they tend to be a bit more sort of educated, if you like, and which is not trying to do a disservice to traditional businesses, but they tend to be much more familiar with the types of platforms and things that you can use, and so often what they need is a little bit of support in terms of maybe connecting the dots between those, and particularly if you're getting into more complex things like stock management, that is an area where we tend to see a little bit of opportunity too.
Yeah, definitely. And you get those people that have just, as you said, fallen into it. They're like, I really have no idea how to do anything regarding finance, let alone how to automate this. And then you're growing and you're looking at inventory management, you're looking at distribution channels, you're looking at multi-jurisdiction VAT. It can start getting very complicated as soon as you start broadening out who and what you're selling. And there's lots of platforms out there now that you can sell on. Obviously, eBay, probably the first one that people really embraced. Maybe from
showing your age there, Ryan.
I know I am. Yeah, not that I actually have really sold anything on eBay, I think, at any point. But obviously, then you got Amazon and Shopify that enable this to grow massively, and then you've got the nuanced little areas like Etsy that started very bespoke and has now grown into this huge thing. And then you've got the website connectors as well, right? If you've got your own website and you built something, you've got those connector tools such as WooCommerce where you need to plug a system in. So there's multiple areas that you can sell, and businesses can sell across all of those channels or one of those channels. And that really changes the tech that you need and the level of complexity for automation, as well as just the volume. This all comes down to volume. If you are having to process every single transaction manually, you are not going to grow. So how do you automate this and make this as effective as possible? So let's start on what I call single channel. As you say, you're that one-man band, or you're just growing. You go, okay, I want to start dabbling in this area. I want to sell something, but you've got small widgets that you're selling, so you're going to be selling hopefully in volume, but maybe not making loads of money. The critical thing is to automate that as much as possible. That's probably the easiest approach, isn't it, from your experience, John?
I mean, it's the easiest approach because it is just in one place. And so, as I kind of mentioned before, I think the one that's probably most typical for our clients is that they tend to be lurching into selling on Amazon in some way, shape or form. And I think the VAT side of things actually, I think, has got a little bit easier because, HMRC have kind of passed the responsibility for managing VAT back to a lot of the platforms as well now. So it becomes a little less complex for firms, or businesses when they're dealing with this. Having said that, though, what can be a bit more challenging, though, is actually the financial reporting side of it, in terms of just understanding where your numbers are. And I think that's what we see is when organizations expand into these platforms, they suddenly, they don't maybe appreciate that you've got a platform fee to pay, you've probably got transaction fees to pay, you maybe have additional shipping costs that you didn't anticipate and stuff. And so you might have been trading, with a reasonable margin, and then suddenly, or thinking that you've got a reasonable margin, and then suddenly finding that it's been almost completely eroded, and you might even be losing money on certain products or on the main product that you sell. But like I say, I think single platform is probably, it's definitely the easiest, and it's really just a matter of understanding what you're doing on there, and then figuring out how you get your finance system, your inventory system, your stock system, if you need it, connected into that, so it's as automated as possible and integrated as possible. You've also then got to understand things like, what do you want to do, multi-currency point of view. Again, quite often, when you lurch into e-commerce, you suddenly become exposed not just to people in the UK, but all over the world. And those customers may not want to buy in sterling, or if you go into Amazon, for example, they may sort of point you towards selling in dollars or euros rather than those. And all of a sudden that adds another level of complexity, because you might just have a British pound bank account, and then you're suddenly receiving foreign currency, and suffering transaction fees and FX differences on that, which again makes it more difficult to keep on top of. So I think it's really about just opening up your horizon to what is it that you could get yourself into in terms of the complexities, and then working out how to accommodate all of those. And not all of those necessarily come with a tech solution per se. Sometimes it's just about management. So like FX, for example, could be as simple as maybe just opening a Wise or a Revolut account, just so you've got those multi-currency accounts that you can access, to then just manage, just to receive that money. And then if you do have costs that are also in those different currencies, to pay out with those, it's more effective than to sort of continuously convert it back to sterling. But again, you just need to understand a little bit more about the business before you can kind of make some of those judgments.
John, it's like you're providing accounting advice on a tech podcast here. So I mean, there's a lot obviously to digest, but from a tech perspective, as well as all those specific things you need to really understand, and the advice regarding foreign currency is critical, but it really comes down to real-time reporting, doesn't it? So if we can get like a cloud-based finance solution, and you getting all your income, your costs in as effectively as possible, you can see in real time, am I making the profit? You can potentially splice that by product groups as well. That's something to be able to do via the connected tools, to go, okay, well, am I making profit in certain area? Where do I need to focus? So all of that is just about giving you the insights to make the decision, and you need a right tech stack, cloud setup to enable that. So if you are, as you said right at the start, an Amazon seller, and you're lucky enough to be on the likes of Zero, Free Agent, etc., you can do a direct connection in, especially as I know Free Agent have released this recently. I think we talked about that on the last podcast. It's just been out. You can connect directly in and bring all of those, I guess, your income, grossing up for your fees, and then what's being deposited in the bank account for a one-click reconciliation. That is what you want to be aiming for. You want to be basically streamlining everything that you do from a selling perspective, that you just have to push one button to reconcile it. That's the ultimate goal. But as you start, talking about different channels, multi-channel, and you get to a large amount of volume, you don't want to be doing this manually. Yes, you can export some files. Yes, you can import those files into your finance solution, but you're now doing things manually. It's slowing things down. You're not going to see your business's finances in real time. You're not going to be able to make those decisions. So if we're looking at those connector tools, John, what are the ones that I guess stand out for the breadth of platforms they connect into, the quality of the integration, and I guess, they've just proved themselves, they've been around for so damn long.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are three that stand out, and I know you've got another one that you're sort of more familiar with than I am. So for me, the probably the three that would stand out are A2X, Link My Books, and then Dext Commerce, which used to be the old Greenback product that they bought a few years ago, and they've been around in our space for a long time, particularly A2X and sort of Link My Books. I think they've probably been around for 7 or 8 years, if not maybe longer now, and all have their advantages and sort of disadvantages, if you like, in terms of most of them will connect to all of the multi-channel weird and wonderful things that you could possibly imagine. So from the well-known, like the Amazons and eBays and Etsy's, to sort of some of the more out of left field things. And all of them have the same objective, which is to do what you were sort of saying in terms of trying to streamline, getting the information out of all these platforms, which inevitably produce information in differing ways. So there's not always a standard structure to get your sales information out, your settlement information when you're getting paid, after you've taken payments, typically by card, to get stock information and those kind of things. They all collect those in different ways. They all help you manage things like the VAT and the shipping costs, etc., in slightly different ways as well. And they all bring with them slightly differing ways of doing some of the automation in the background and some of the reconciliation. Because again, as you kind of alluded to, Ryan, once you're kind of pulling that information into, say, like a Xero or a free agent, it's great that you can get that in there without having too much manual intervention. But actually, if you've still got to go through a bank reconciliation and click OK on 1,000 transactions every day, that's still a massively manual task that no one wants to do. And being able to manage that. And the other thing, talking about volume, is about managing the load in the systems. And again, all of these products offer differing ways of kind of rolling up, say, like a day's transactions, to post that as a single transaction to manage your load a bit more effectively. And so for me, when it comes to kind of choosing one of these solutions, it's really about looking at what you're connecting into now, looking at what you want to connect into maybe in the future if you've still got to expand into various various additional channels, and then really just say, it's almost just a trial by fire almost, and sort of connect to these products. Connect them into the demo account in Xero or whatever, and just try them out and see what you get in terms of the automation, the reporting, and the data flowing through, just to get a feel for how it works. Because sometimes it's quite nuanced, and you've got to really just get a feel for how that works, particularly on things like stock. Stock's the big one for me. Is like you can get some of these systems that will push stock transactions back and forth. Sometimes they'll only receive them one way and send them back into a system, and so that can be the harder part to manage.
Yeah, let's come back to stock in a minute, because that's a horrible area, and it's one that we definitely need to touch on. But I think every single one of those connected tools will have slightly different nuances that will either benefit you or work against you. So the first thing to do is obviously look at the market, look at what's out there, and not just say, oh, it connects into the system that I sell in, but actually, how does it connect? Does it let you splice the data in the way you want to? How will it put down from a settlement point of view, as you say? Like, does it condense it down in the way I want? Because you want to minimize the amount of transactions that are going through those daily, roll-ups that push through. Only work, though, if you align it with how it goes into your bank. So the one thing I say when any business is trying to do this is just check it with your accountant. Just make sure they're happy with how the figures are going to go through. Because if you set this up and then you run it and you let it run, it could destroy your finance system just by pushing a slight setting wrong in the setup. The other thing I've always said is that if I'm doing digital transformation for any business, I generally go, you want your finance ledger and then you want to get expense management, because that's the biggest time saver. The caveat is if you're an e-commerce business, you want to be doing these connector tools, the automation of your sales, way before you're looking at expense management, because it's the sheer volume. So always, this is your first step. Do it. As soon as you're growing to a point and you actually have a business, you want to be bringing in one of these connector tools. The one that I guess we look at that you've not listed is Amica. We've been working on that because it's got some nuances, some niches that work a little bit differently, especially when you're looking at kind of these WooCommerce connections and the way it splices data. Normally we look at the ones that you said, John, just in this one instance for a very specific requirement for a client. We've been looking at Amica. That is also on the market. So let's get into inventory. Let's try and dive into this for about 5 minutes, way bigger than the 5 minutes window we've got here. But I'd say there's two levels on this. There's one where you are starting to sell goods across multi-channel, and you want to see, you want a live feed into those channels saying how much is available. You don't want to have to manually update each channel, which I've seen people do. Every time they make a sale, they go into the other channel, they type that we've got one less, right? You need a tool that enables that. If that's all you want to do regarding inventory, you don't want to be managing your acquisitions or purchases, you don't want to be managing your logistics, then a tool like Expandly works quite well. It's a very simple tool. It's grown over time, but it was based on just tracking inventory across multiple channels. It now has some more advanced inventory features. But if you want to go into procurement, you want to go into automated distribution, rather than just manually printing a label off each time, writing on it, and then sending it out, which you may be doing. you need to start looking into inventory management apps that have connections into, I guess, these sales channels. John, what are the ones that you generally would go to first in this space?
I mean, for us, we typically lean into Unleashed, but Sin7 as well, offer very similar functionality, and particularly after sort of like the merger with Deer, which probably had a slightly more focused sort of e-commerce set of features. And I think in particular, there are two trigger points for us to kind of move into something more complex like those. Number one, it may be that not only are you selling multi-channel, in terms of the various recognized platforms, but you might want to also do that through your website. And we kind of touched on Shopify earlier on, or WooCommerce and stuff like that. And I think as soon as you get into that just adds an extra layer of complexity that needs to be managed in a platform like that. And then the other one, as you rightly said, is actually dealing with physical stock itself. And some e-commerce businesses are literally sort of 3PL stuff, where you don't ever actually touch your own stock. It arrives in a third-party warehouse and then it's shipped from there. Some of it will come in and you'll actually do something with it. You might package it up differently. You might bundle items together, and depending on what you're doing with the stock would kind of depend on which of those products I would lean towards. I think Sin7 is probably better for those kind of 3PL type businesses. Unleashed tends to be a little bit better, I think, if you're actually doing something with the stock. And I also think the sort of Shopify integration is probably a little bit better than Sin7, but you're talking about marginal things here. And I find Sin7 is slightly more complex than Unleashed, but again, I think it's probably personal preference than anything else. But I think you've got to really just understand exactly what you're doing with the stock and then what your challenges are. The benefit of having those products as well is that you suddenly start to see a little bit more data around your stock, because they're combining lots of data from the purchase all the way through to the sale process in a way that allows you to say, right, okay, can I drill down into specific products? Can I drill down into product types, and can I see things like the landed cost of the product when it's coming into the UK, for example, to then be onwardly shipped? Can I see what my real sales are, what my margin are, and also what channels are working? And if you're getting a direct feed through some of the connectors that we talked about, you can get that information, but it might not turn up in your finance system necessarily, depending on how you set it up. And that's another thing that just to be aware of. And I think being aware of what products are selling well, what's got good margin, what doesn't have good margin, and also what platforms are working well is a really important part of running an e-commerce business, because that allows you to focus your efforts, either to sell more with better margin over here, or to focus in on a product that's got poor margin and try and figure out why and if you can improve that margin.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing that we're now starting to see in these inventory management solutions is predictive forecasting, utilizing, I guess, the new realm of AI and plugging that in. They'll be able to kind of give insights into where your sales may go, and therefore trigger, well, what stock, what inventory do we need to be acquiring to get, to enable those sales to occur. So yeah, I think it's Sin7 Core now, which was formerly Deer, rather than the other Sin7. They've been rebadging them. But yeah, the other thing I would touch on is, if you are a traditional business, you've been selling in a shop or selling in multiple sites, and now you're switching to e-commerce, the ability to track what you sell in the store and what you sell online, and especially if you are literally selling what you've got in your shop online, you need to make sure that stock availability, stock numbers are frequently in place. You need an app like an Unleashed or a Sin7 to be able to do that. And depending on how you want to share that information in and how you want to reconcile that, it will very much depend which route you go down. For example, we've been working with a client recently where they needed to push inventory information for their B2B from Unleashed, but with the way the summary for a day occurred, they needed a connector tool such as A2X or Amica or Dexcommerce to handle the consolidation of their online sales. And you need to be able to shut off the push into the finance solution from Unleashed for those B2C sales. And sometimes you can't do that in every platform. So you have to have that flexibility. You really need to delve into the nuances. And that's where talking to a digital consultant such as ourselves really helps. It really adds the money, because adds value, because otherwise you go down a route that just wastes your time and creates mess. Look, we've been talking about this quite a lot. And one thing I do want to summarize before we get into our what's our preferred platforms, is that there's a factor of 10 generally here. If you do a connector tool, you're looking at maybe around £25 per month on the lower end. If you're looking at an inventory tool, you look at like £250 a month. So you need to be looking at where am I in the growth of the business and where should I be triggering like using these tools. I'd say anywhere where you're kind of getting like 30 to 50,000 in income, you should be looking at a connector. Anything where, you're growing into now you've got 5 members of staff, maybe before that, you need a proper inventory tool. So work out where you are in that journey, where you're going to be in that journey over the next couple of years, and pick the right system. Now, John, we've only got a couple of minutes, but we always do a bed by bin. Really hard in this area because we've covered such a diverse range of products that go in certain areas. I think I'm going to let you go first on this one, John.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I do you know what? I think one of the challenges as well in this area is I don't think there are any bad products necessarily. So the bed by bin is going to be a little bit challenging towards the end. But I think in terms of like what I would bed, probably Dext Commerce. I think just because we've got a really good relationship with the guys there, and they've helped us in some particular instances with particular clients where we've been able to tweak their own products just to help manage some of the data flows that we've had challenges around, which other platforms haven't managed to resolve. So that's been really helpful. In terms of buy, I think I would go with Link My Books. I know Dan, who's the co-founder there, quite well, and I know that he's always interested if the right numbers on the table. So I'm sure he'd sell to me as well. I think. Maybe. And then to bin, what would I bin? Do you know what I would bin actually? Saying there's no bad products in the market. So the direct zero Amazon integration is appalling, or was appalling, and you'll see that my 1-star review is on the website for that. I don't think it's been improved since I absolutely slated it, but that was an abysmal implementation. If Zero are listening and you've improved it, let me know and I'll have another look at it. But that was a terrible experience when I looked at that a while ago for a client.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you're rating something 1-star, John, it must be pretty poor. All right, so where am I at? I would say better probably say A2X. They're just really experienced in the marketplace. They've got a great product that it's just robust. It just works. Buy, I really like. I guess where Unleashed is with the plethora of tools that it can connect into. It's created its own app marketplace around everything it works with, and I really like that, and I think that's just offering so much potential growth. And then Bin, unfortunately for me, it's Expandly, and that's only because they've moved out a space that I loved them in. That it was reasonable value. It did that multi kind of inventory across multiple sites. They've developed the product now to be an inventory app, and they've put the price up to reflect that. And I just think I don't think the solution is as good as others that they're trying to compete with, whereas they had their own little niche, and that's just a frustration for me. But look, with just opinions, and as you said, it's really hard to do because every app has its own unique space and can be used. We have used pretty much everything that we have just gone through today in the nuances that business needs that specific product. But I think it's a great place to wrap up this week's show. Hopefully this episode provides you with valuable insights you can take forward. Please do check out the show notes for links to digital tool disruptors, if I can actually say it, Beaver and Struthers, and our wonderful sponsor, iPlicit, for that kind of mid-tier finance solution. Plus anyone and anything that we have referenced in the show. If you want to ensure you catch future episodes, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and look out for the release every Thursday morning. We look forward to speaking to you next week.